So yesterday we received the official announcement of Man of Tomorrow coming to cinemas in July of 2027, which is the Superman follow-up or the Superman sequel or whatever you want to call it. A lot of people have been saying that this is the first Superman sequel since 1980 because, that's when Superman 2 came out and we haven't really gotten a direct Superman follow-up till then. I think that is still the case. I think that Man of Tomorrow isn't exactly a follow-up. I'm going to go over all of this in the video. Going to talk about what I think is inspiring Man of Tomorrow, where I think they're drawing from, what I think we can expect from it, and why it's not exactly a traditional Superman sequel, kind of in this, not in exactly the same vein as like Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was not a traditional sequel to Man of Steel in the Superman sense. I think Man of Tomorrow is the same thing. Like, yes, they're straight away advertising the film with, the name Man of Tomorrow, which obviously Man of Tomorrow is a very known Superman name. It's one of his main titles, along with Man of Steel, Champion of the Oppressed, Last Son of Krypton, a lot of this sort of stuff. Man of Tomorrow was one of those, not used as often as the Man of Steel or the Last Son of Krypton, but still used quite common enough. Really quick before getting into the video, just want to say if this is your first time watching the channel, please like, share, subscribe. I make DC videos a lot, I make Marvel videos a lot. Also starting a new series called One Perfect Episode, which will be hitting the channel sometime later this month. You can check out the intro or the trailer to it on the channel, where I'm going to be going over like episodes I consider perfect, putting a little bit more effort into them than I do with a traditional video. But anyway, we'll leave all of that. We'll talk about Man tomorrow because I'm excited. It's an official announcement to the follow up. Came really quickly on the heels of Superman, which I think is pretty undeniably a success of a film. I know certain parts of the DC fan base are acting like Superman wasn't that successful. It was. It dominated social media for the past 2 months. TikTok edits, Twitter videos, YouTube shorts, whatever. Superman was like the main thing dominating these areas, especially with, kindness is the new punk rock. A line that's not even said in the movie, but, that's the general meaning, is that kindness is the new punk rock. And, we have the song like Punk Rocker accompanying edits of every single franchise you can think of, showing the impact that Superman as a film has had on a lot of this sort of stuff. And I'm really excited that we're getting the follow-up so soon. Like 2027, that's less than 2 years away. It's really soon, and it's really exciting, and we're going to get kind of a summer of the super family for the next 3 years. This year we had Superman. Next year we're having Supergirl. The year after that we're having Man of Tomorrow, which James Gunn has said over and over again over the past few months that he is working on the follow-up to Superman, but he wouldn't call it a sequel. And I think there's some clear reasons for that. A lot of people have been saying Man of Tomorrow is definitely the Superman sequel or whatever. I think it's more called a follow-up because I don't think Superman is going to be the main character in it. I think in this scenario, Man of Tomorrow will refer to Lex Luthor. And the reason why I think this is because, well, one, Lex is the main person in his Lexo suit. Superman and Lex are the two people that are being advertised for this film through really cool comic book art, where 3 different comic book artists have done their versions of this Superman and this Lex Luthor in some form, which is really cool. But 3 people posted these pictures: James Gunn, the director of the film, and is presumably the writer as well; David Corenswet, who is playing Superman; and Nicholas Hoult, who's playing Lex Luthor. Some other people from the films have commented, like Isabella Merced said "see you soon," which sort of implies she might be in the film, or the Justice Gang might be in the film. But generally, this is being advertised or being promoted out as a film with these 3 central people: James Gunn, Nicholas Hoult, and David Cornsworth. So I think it's pretty easy to assume from that the film will primarily feature Superman and Lex as the 2 main characters, which, Superman, the film that we just saw, also did. But I think that this is kind of showcasing that this is going to be a Lex Luthor-centric film. And the reason why I think this is, well, for one, James Gunn has said that one of the main inspirations for a Superman film was Lex Luthor Man of Steel, which is a comic that is completely focused on Lex and, has Superman in it as well, obviously. But a big part of it is a version of the comic that's about him, where he's the central protagonist, where he's the POV. And I think Man of Tomorrow is going to be that. I think Man of Tomorrow will be a film where Lex is the protagonist. And Lex has quite often in comics and in TV has said that he's the Man of Tomorrow, not Superman. I mean, check out Supergirl season 4, episode 15. I know people don't love that show as much, but John Cryer's Lex Luthor in that made a big deal about saying that he's the Man of Tomorrow, not Superman. And I think that this is kind of what they're going with here, the angle that Lex Luthor is the protagonist. He has to work with Superman for some reason. Now, Man of Tomorrow is a comic book that came out in the 90s following up from Death of Superman. and features Lex as an antagonist. My audio for one of the bits didn't record. What I was going to say was that we also have to think about Brainiac potentially being in the film, which has been a huge theory for a long time that the sequel was going to have Brainiac for a bunch of reasons, which I get into after this. But also that we saw some storyboards from one of the behind the scenes Superman featurettes that was that had this image that was Superman and Supergirl with a character that looked like Brainiac below them, kind of showing off what looked to be a fight scene that obviously ended up not being in the film. Now there are some I don't want to say reports because I don't know if they're confirmed, but I've heard that James Gunn originally wanted the first Superman film to be Brainiac as the villain, Superman, Supergirl fight him, whatever. It's possible these storyboards are just like huge leftovers from whatever the original version of the film was meant to be before he realized that was too much to do in a first film, which I agree. But I think that, those storyboards they're showing them off maybe as a hint to what the sequel or the follow-up film was going to be, which we now know is Man of Tomorrow, which is really, really exciting. And like I said, Man of Tomorrow has been, a main, not just for Lex Luthor, it's also been used for Superman. One of the most famous Superman comics of all time is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. There's other stuff, it's been one of his titles since forever. It's just something that's you sort of associate with Superman far more than you do with Lex Luthor. But I think in the context of this, it really works and it really makes sense that this is sort of a Lex Luthor focused film. Another reason we kind of have to build off of this is potential huge Peacemaker season 2 spoilers here going past what we've seen. But you can see in the trailer that one of the trailers, one of the shots that's inside that, I don't know, that, I don't know if it's Pentagon, DOD, or whatever, one of the rooms that was in Superman is also in Peacemaker season 2 from the trailer, and Otis and Sydney from Superman, who were two of Lex Luthor's henchmen, are both in that scene, which we now know they're going to appear in Peacemaker season 2. And James Gunn has also said to expect huge DCU connections and really get an idea for where the DCU is heading through the back sort of episodes of Peacemaker season 2. He's been really hyping up episodes 6, 7, and 8. Wouldn't be out of the realm possibility that Nicholas Hoult shows up as Lex Luthor, potentially in the final episode or something like that. Maybe he gets a release because the DOD need him for something or need him to kind of deal with something. I think that that's clearly where they're heading with a lot of this stuff, that they're building up Lex Luthor to be, I guess, one of his own protagonists, where he said, James Gunn has said Superman really does start their direction for where they want to go for the DCU over the next 10 years and really showcase what the chapter Gods and Monsters is really about. So I think it makes sense that when they reach the end of this 10-year plan, that we're going to have a big idea for like what they were planning with Superman and Lex Luthor together as both characters. And I think that they're going to have storylines that are very much connected, but I think that what James Gunn is going to do that's going to be unique is probably have Lex Luthor be his own character that is separate from Superman, that sure merges with Superman a lot and has a lot to do with Superman a lot, but will stand alone as his own sort of character as well. Like I could see after Man of Tomorrow, we almost diverge the Superman and Lex Luthor franchises where they both have their own separate films. They tie in again for the bigger stuff. But yeah, and a lot of people have been theorizing what Man of Tomorrow would be well before we got this announcement. Like, when James Gunn said it's not exactly a sequel, a lot of people, myself included, were sort of steering in the direction of thinking this was going to be like a Last Children of Krypton film that would feature both Superman and Supergirl in a big way, because it makes sense to have Superman, Supergirl, then the Last Children of Krypton sort of be the cap on a trilogy, if you will. Another bunch of people were saying that it might be World's Finest and have Superman and Batman merge. There's a lot of, one of the main World's Finest comics includes Superman and Batman sort of dealing with Kara and Supergirl and that whole thing. That would have made sense to bring that in, but also 2027 is so soon to bring in a Batman into the DCU when we know that the Batman Part 2 is also coming out that year, which, side note, crazy that we're getting a Batman and Superman film in the same year. The closest thing we had was in 2005 and 2006 with Batman Begins and Superman Returns being in the 2 separate years, but even then that was not the same year like this. I was kind of thinking that too, that it was going to be a Superman Supergirl sort of film. James Gunn didn't even really shoot down the World's Finest rumors. At one point he said that it wasn't going to be a Batman v Superman situation, but he didn't exactly say no to it being a Superman Batman team up film. So I'm personally happy that they're not going in the direction of it being a Superman and Batman team up film. I do expect Supergirl to be in this film and play a major role. I'm starting to think that maybe the reason why they changed Supergirl's title from being Woman of Tomorrow to just Supergirl was less about sort of branding and more to differentiate it from Man of Tomorrow, because it might be a little bit weird to go from Woman of Tomorrow straight to Man of Tomorrow if Supergirl doesn't play a role in this film. It might be a little bit confusing to make it think that like, what are they doing here? There's a lot of sort of combining things and merging things, and it just, I can see now why they changed Supergirl's title from Woman of Tomorrow to just Supergirl. Personally, I think Supergirl is a better title anyway. I think the first versions of these characters should just have their names as the title of the films. I know I'm boring, but that's just kind of what I like. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with this. I think it's definitely going to be a Lex Luthor focused film. I think we're probably going to start the film with his point of view. I think we're going to go through, a certain amount of time with him as the primary lead before Superman or Clark really comes into the film. I think it will be a co-lead film. I think that, the fact that they're advertising it with Superman and Lex Luthor as the two faces of it, it's clear that it's not going to be like Lex Luthor for 90% of it with Superman for 10% of it. I think it's going to be co-lead film, but I think that Lex Luthor will be the primary protagonist I will be following, with Superman being the co-lead. Maybe Superman is sort of an antagonist in the film at the start because we're following Lex Luthor's point of view, we're getting sympathetic with him, and then Superman comes in as like, the villain essentially, which that could be cool to see if they do something like that. And then they eventually have to combine to face off with Brainiac towards the end of the film, which is also why I think Supergirl is in the film. I think if you're doing Brainiac as a villain, you probably should have Supergirl there along with Superman. I'm with Isabella Merced, who played Hawkgirl in the films. Little tease, I think we can expect the Justice Gang to play a primary role as well. Aaron Pierre, who's playing John Stewart in the upcoming Lanterns HBO series, also commented something that potentially teases he's in the film too, which would make sense. Lanterns comes out early next year, probably January or February of next year. That gives you like an entire year and a half without John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and then you bring them into to this film in Man of Tomorrow to make their big screen debut. That'd be really cool. I think it'd be cool to kind of have a lot of these extra hero sort of stuff. Personally, I'm really happy that it doesn't seem like it's a Justice Gang focused film, because one of my worries when James Gunn kept saying that it wasn't going to be a traditional follow up to Superman was that it was going to be a Justice Gang film that would have Superman in it, which that's fine. I'm okay getting stuff like that, but for the first major Superman follow up, I want this to be something that isn't about the Justice Gang with Superman there. I want it to be about Superman primary characters, if that makes sense, which Lex Luthor clearly is. But yeah, people were saying, this is the first direct Superman sequel since 1980. I think that it's kind of clearly not, because I think it's sort of similar to Batman v Superman, where Batman was kind of the primary and protagonist of Batman v Superman, with Superman having a lot to do in it, being a main character in it, but not necessarily the main character in it. I think this is a similar situation where Lex Luthor is probably clearly the main character in this and not Superman, which sort of follows through with it maybe not being the traditional sequel. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I think. What do you think? Where do you think they're going with all this stuff? What do you think they're going to do with it? Are you excited for it? I can't wait for it. It's so exciting to be in the DCU era where we're getting a lot of Superman stuff. Because the DCEU, I'm a big fan of Man of Steel. I'm a big fan of Batman v Superman. I know it's crazy to say, but I am. And it was so disheartening during that era to constantly hear that they're working on a Superman sequel or a Superman follow up. We might get it, we might not get it. It was a lot of that sort of stuff where just you were waiting for something that you kind of in the back of your mind knew you were never going to get, but you were hoping you would get it anyway. And now we're in an area where we are getting these Superman follow ups. And I mean, with James Gunn, we know how hard he works and how hard he writes and how hard he directs. He is kind of a workaholic where he's really, really, really trying to push this stuff out. Like, if any other studio announced Superman's release date for being July 2027, I would be like, I don't think they're going to make that. But with James Gunn, I feel pretty confident that he will make it, because we only got the DCU announcement in early 2023, like January of 2023, with Superman having a July 2025 release date, which was less than 2 years away. He got it out, and it was great in my opinion. So I have that confidence in him that he will get Man of Tomorrow out when he says it's going to come out, and it's probably going to be great. So I can't wait to see that sort of stuff, like, I don't want to throw shade at Marvel, but if Marvel announced, like, take Fantastic Four, for example, a film that just came out around the same time as Superman. No shade towards Fantastic Four, also like the film. But if Marvel announced a Fantastic Four sequel for July 2027, I would straight away assume that it's going to be delayed to like 2028 or 2029, because that's just what we've come to expect from Marvel at this point. Like, how many times has Avengers 5 been delayed? It's just, it's how it is. So I think Superman's going to make the release date, and I can't wait to see what we get with Man of Tomorrow, and I hope it's going to be as good, if not better, than the first film was, which was already great. But yeah, that's how I feel about Man Tomorrow. That's my thoughts on what it's going to be and what we can expect from it. Like I said earlier, working on a series called One Perfect Episode, would really appreciate the help and support when that comes out. Just, tell me if you like it, tell me if you don't like it, sort of stuff. Comment episodes you want me to cover on it. I'm working on Daredevil Season 3 Episode 1 video at the moment, which is going to be the first one of that. I'm really excited to get that out. And if you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Even if you're not new to the channel, maybe like and share would be a huge help and really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.